So, hi, Helena. It's great to have you with us on the podcast today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting.
You're welcome. And I am interested for this discussion. I'm not exactly sure where it's going to go because we're going to dive into metaverse, augmented reality, a whole world that honestly I know very little about, but I know it's coming. So I'm excited that you're going to tell us what this next phase for sort of communication and collaboration is going to be, what we as small business owners need to know about that ahead of time, what we can start to prepare and get ready. So, yeah, so I feel like I'm kind of going in blind into this a little bit. So I'm excited to see where it goes. But before we dive into that side of the discussion, I'd love it if you could share with the audience a bit about how you came to be where you are today, how you started your business.
Yeah, so that goes back to when I was a kid. I always found it fascinating how people organize their activities, how good organization can empower teams, groups, organizations. And I was always asking my parents, how are things organized at work? Yeah, that was something that was always fascinating to me. And that's why I wanted to study business, of course, would make sense. But I was advised to study physics, which I did. I'm a physics engineer. I did my Ph.D. at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. Then I went into investment management as a quantitative analyst, and I became a partner in an investment company. And when I left there, I started my own business. And already in my career in investment management, I had always gravitated toward questions and projects to do with organization design, organizational development. And when I started my company, that became the main point. So Pleinert and Partner, my company that I have since 17 years now, we are focusing on new organization models and new work. We are working across Europe. We are ourselves 100% remote company since day one, so since 17 years, long before people talked about this in the mainstream. So yeah, that's how I came where I am today.
What an interesting story. And I can't imagine being a child and thinking, how does the business work, from an organizational point of view? And it's fascinating that that was always something that you were so interested in. And now you've made that not just your career, but your business as well. So that's wonderful. So when it came to start your own business, what was the big consideration there? Was there something that happened that made you think, no one else is doing this, I want to do it? Or were you pushed into that, or was it always part of your plan?
It was part of my plan to have an impactful position. And when I was a teenager, I saw myself as a manager. I was reading business magazines in my father's office. There were always business magazines lying around and fascinated by the corporate world. Also, entrepreneurship wasn't like excluded. My grandmother was an entrepreneur, but my thoughts were more influenced by the corporate world. So that's what I wanted. And then that's when I went into investment management, the kind of career that I started. And I became a partner of an investment company. But when I left there, I considered various options. And one of them was starting my own business. At that time, some opportunities came up that made me start right away. And that's how I started at that time. And I probably would have gone this way anyway, whether it was at that time or later, because one thing I didn't know when I was 15 is that in the corporate world, even in a very successful career, I would never have the level of independence that I have as an entrepreneur.
Mm. And so, what does that level of independence look like for you? Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs go into business wanting more freedom, more independence, but then they get caught up in this trap. They don't necessarily put the systems in place to make that independence a reality. Lots
But
of entrepreneurs end up overworking or focusing in on the wrong areas. There's all sorts of things that step up for us. What does that independence mean for you, and how did you make that happen?
I started working in the area that fascinates me. And it took some time to really focus on it. Like in the beginning, the market took us into a specific area. When we say organizational development and new and old work, then that means also human resources. And the biggest part of the human resources market is recruiting. And in the beginning, that was like the easy part of the market. So that became the bigger part of our business. But it was difficult to do this step from there to being really an innovation consultancy that we are today. We were tapped in the success of that because once you do something and you do it well, then the clients will always want that and they will recommend you for that and everybody will see you as that. And we wanted to break free of that. And what we did is really we restarted the business. We let it like fall asleep a bit. We never closed the business and we always had business, but there was a time when we didn't pursue new business. So the business was going down, we didn't fill the pipeline, existing clients were there, but one by one they were disappearing. We intentionally let it go slow and then we restarted. And that's something we did during the last like 3 years. And now we are full power in the new mode and we really got to break free. We managed to set the emphasis the way that we wanted it.
And what you said there echoes certainly my business story, but also the stories of many of the guests on the show, where you start somewhere and then you realize, hold on a minute, this isn't exactly what I had in my mind, or I'm starting to go slightly off in this direction where I wanted to be over here. So for myself, I started communication consultancy around internal communications, but I was getting pulled into lots of writing, lots of speech writing, and it wasn't really the things that I love to do. And so I was getting more and more clients and I kept putting my prices up, but they kept coming. I was like, damn it.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
And even now I still get people saying, oh, can you help us with this? Or can you do this communication training? And I have to be really disciplined and say, no, that's not what I'm doing anymore, because it was so far away from my passion and my purpose and what really fills me up. And as a business, you have to work in an area that you really feel excited about so that you will show up as your best every day and keep learning.
Exactly. Yeah. That's where you have the competitive advantage, where you have both competency and enthusiasm. Yeah.
Exactly. And you're talking about your business and that's the space you're coming from. It's a very different discussion. And suddenly people can't imagine working with anyone else because they can see your passion. They can see how dedicated you are, that you really are the sort of genius in this zone. So your business flows much more. But you know, after you've made that decision and everything is in place, that that's the right thing for you to do. But getting from A to B can be quite scary. How did that feel to you? And was there anything that you told yourself to help make that transition easier?
It was not scary for us. I think the point is that when you start from zero in business, that moment can be somewhat scary. In German, there is this phrase of jumping into cold water, right? So when you first start and you have no clients, or I mean, you might have a few contacts that are already lined up as potential clients, but you're really starting from near zero. That moment can be scary. But once you have a successful business and you want to reorient it and reset the emphasis, I didn't find that scary.
I think that's good encouragement for anyone who is in business thinking, doesn't feel like what I imagined, that actually like taking a step back, reevaluating what it is that you want to be doing with your skills and bringing that forward.
We were doing well, so that means we were competing reasonably well. But we felt that in the area where we moved to, where we are now, we have much better competitive edge.
Mm-hmm.
That is a point, yeah.
Yeah, great point. So I feel before I ask this next question, because you're all about helping companies with their innovation, moving into this metaverse virtual reality space, I feel we almost need to do a bit of a glossary because these are terms that I'm not terribly familiar with. So in case there's other people listening who are also like, you what now? Then let's go in just a very quick glossary. So metaverse, what does that mean?
Let me say one thing. The whole topic of remote, hybrid, and metaverse work is a hot topic in new work and new organization, but it's only one topic that we cover. We have other important topics like diversity, inclusion, like new forms of hierarchy, leadership, and so on. So just to position it, but the metaverse is one very important topic for us. And for me personally, it's kind of maybe my favorite topic among our portfolio. And so what's the metaverse? One answer would be like nobody knows. There is no generally accepted exact definition. Of course, there is kind of a generally accepted vague space of what it is and what it is not. Yeah, this for sure. I would like to quote two white papers. There are newer ones, but these two are from 2021, which was the year when the metaverse first burst into the public discussion in business and so on. And I think that they provide really good definitions that are still very useful. So one of the papers is the Corporate Hitchhiker's Guide by BCG, and they see the metaverse as three areas. One is the so-called M worlds. So these are virtual worlds where you can go into a 3D environment, where you can move like a video game, but it's not for gaming. I mean, you can also maybe play games there, but not only. You can socialize, you can do business and so on. So these are these virtual worlds. That's one aspect. Then there is the hardware, like the headsets, for example. Yeah. And then there is the area of certain new business models which are under the title of Web3, such as blockchains, the cryptocurrencies, NFTs, and so on, which often are come together with virtual worlds. For example, worlds where you can assert your property of a digital asset, let's say a digital painting or a digital piece of furniture, whatever, that you have created by minting it on one of the blockchains. That's the connection. Now, a narrower definition comes in the white paper from McKinsey from the same time, which is called value creation in the metaverse. And they were looking more at the metaverse around these virtual worlds and as a portfolio of communication and collaboration instruments, like the internet, but going 3D. Internet more immersive. Not like you and I are seeing each other here on the computer screen in 2D. In the metaverse, we might be sitting in a virtual room together at one virtual desk with one environment around, or maybe something that's projected onto our environment, so there would still be part of our physical environment, and then there would be a table projected in the middle, and Melitta hologram would sit facing me, and me hologram would sit facing you. So these are various things that may come. So the hologram thing, that's not possible yet. But sitting together in the virtual room, that's something we could do anytime. Right now, if you had such a headset as I just showed you, we could do that. And that's the more narrow definition. It's more these virtual worlds, a new form of remote communication, more immersive. And that's also, the word immersive is important. We often use the term immersive technologies. And also I like to use that when I talk about what do organizations do with the metaverse. The metaverse has become like a really fashionable and much hyped word. There's also negative emotions. Some people are saying, no, this is, now we talk about AI, the metaverse was yesterday, the fashion of yesterday, today's fashion is AI. So that's true. Today's, the big hype of today is AI, and also a very important topic, but that doesn't mean that the metaverse has gone away. The development of these technologies is underway. And that's why I also like to use the term immersive, which describes it.
So the other terms that are used quite a lot is virtual, augmented, and extended reality. Are they just different terms for the same thing, or are they different things?
No, so virtual reality is what I said. If we were in a virtual room, we put on these headsets, and then we don't see our physical rooms around us anymore. In fact, that's one of the disadvantages of the headset, because if you want to drink a glass of water, you don't see where your glass is, and you're trying to get it, and you might throw it over because you don't see. Yeah. So you are completely in the virtual space. That's virtual reality. And we could be sitting around a table, but we could also choose something that is not possible in the physical space. We could be sitting around a table, but it could be floating in the sky, or we could be at a location where we would never hold a meeting, like on top of Mount Kilimanjaro or something like this. Would be very beautiful. If we were actually there, it would be probably too cold, but in a visual environment, it would be beautiful. So that's virtual reality. It's completely around you, you're completely immersed, and you are separated from your physical reality by the headset. Augmented reality is the contrary. You are in your physical reality and you project some things onto the physical reality. That can be that established applications, for example, in maintenance, that you wear some kind of goggles and you have additional information on the machines that you are repairing, or in logistics where you have additional information or where of the timing and which package is where and so on. So you project additional information on your field of view, or you can also use it to look at the product. Let's say you are looking at a car and you can look at it in another color or something like this. I also heard about a restaurant where instead of a menu, you can look through a tablet and see the food on your table. Also, it's not there, it's just projected. Yeah.
Wow.
So this is augmented reality. And then there's a term that's similar to augmented reality, which is mixed reality, which for me, this is really continuum. There's not clearly a differentiation. I'm just adding that because sometimes people will hear about mixed reality, not augmented. So the tendency is to think that mixed reality has stronger virtual components relative to mere augmented reality, but that's totally a matter of definition. Both are like mixed in the sense that you see your physical space and something is projected on top. And that would be like the example in the future if you and I could meet as holograms.
Okay.
Yeah.
And extended reality?
Yeah, that's the umbrella term. All this together is extended reality.
Okay, great, brilliant. Thank you for clearing all of that up. So if we focus in on this extended reality idea, how soon do you think the sort of an average small business will be using this? Is this something that's like 5-10 years in the future, or is it much closer than that?
It's much closer. Like, firstly, there are applications that are already established in engineering, in architecture, for example. Imagine designing a building as a virtual building. As I said, in maintenance, in logistics, in science, like, for example, medicine, looking at the human body as a model. And for example, a medical student could not only look at the body and zoom in anywhere inside, but also change the scale. The student could become, in the simulation, could like feel like they become macroscopically small and walk through the blood vessels. I'm not sure if there's software that does exactly that, but some things like this are possible. In these kind of applications, engineering, science, and similar, and design, and so these are already established, but they are not typical for very small businesses. But the second next most established one that's already used relatively much and is on the way to become established is using extended reality in training. There are studies, for example, there is an impressive study by Pricewaterhouse that shows how much faster people learn and how much more effectively they learn when they learn by scenarios in extended reality. In that case, it was virtual reality. In the study, they compared traditional learning in the classroom, e-learning, and learning in VR. And the learning in VR was so much more effective than the two others. And it was about soft skills. In the study, it's about teaching skills of being inclusive behavior. And because the participants are able to train that in situations in VR where they were inside the situation, like being a character in a movie, you being the character, playing through situations, the experience is strong, the anchoring is strong. Also the empathy for why are we doing this is strong. That's a very impressive example of VR, but you can use it for many areas of soft skills. And that's certainly a relevant area for small businesses because there are many trainers and coaches in small businesses. And then the third area, which is the one that is least mature, and that's not yet here, but that's close, is using it just as a communication. So instead of Zoom, go in virtual reality or some form of augmented reality. That's not yet here, but for example, Microsoft is right now rolling out to test users Microsoft Mesh, which is Microsoft Teams plus virtual reality. So in Microsoft Teams, you can text someone. You can call them and be on voice. You can open up a video just like in Zoom. And now what Mesh brings is on top, you can also go and meet each other in virtual reality. And that is already now being rolled out It's a closed test. It's not, you can't buy that yet, but it's being rolled out to test users. So this is relatively close, and that's so things are developing very fast. How fast, of course, difficult to say. But I would like to quote a participant of one of my seminars. This participant said, "The future has a tendency to sneak up on you."
Yes, very true. So talking about this sort of virtual reality meeting, that last example you gave, what would be the benefit of meeting in virtual reality versus meeting on Zoom like we do today?
That's a very good question. Just like today, only because we can video conference, that doesn't mean we don't use text. That doesn't mean we don't use calls that are only audio without video. It's always a question of the correct situational use. So for a meeting of two people like us, in my opinion, there is not so much of a difference because I can see you. Yeah? I was in a video conference with somebody who said we should meet face to face. And I said, but we are face to face. Yeah. But as you can see, that illustrates, I'm giving this example to illustrate that there is, of course, it's a personal thing. It's a subjective thing also, how much face to face is enough for you to feel that it's really face to face. So for me personally, for example, in a one-on-one meeting, a video meeting is perfectly enough. But when you have larger groups and more complex interactions, you want to do some workshops and represent things and maybe represent them in 3D. And so of course, being in a virtual room together, that is a completely different, that is like worlds apart from being on Zoom or other video conferencing tool where you have 10 little pictures on your screen. Yeah.
Thank you. That makes that much clearer as well. I know a lot of the people that do listen to the show are in that field of education in some way or another. Maybe they're a coach or a trainer, or there's some educational aspect of the service that they offer. If they were to do that in the virtual reality space, it sounds like it's not just a case of delivering the training in virtual reality, but there's going to be a whole suite of new tools, maybe some kind of 3D version of PowerPoint or some way
Yes, yeah.
making these models, as you say, with people running around doing things that you can then see and comment on and be part of. Is that true? And how far away are we from that? And what would it take for a small business to invest in that?
It comes back to a bit what I said about the number of people in a meeting or also the type of content. Like in training, I would recommend to any small business that is training, let's say, soft skills. That would cover many businesses. If I talk of everybody who is a leadership trainer, a communication trainer, a sales trainer, and so on, to consider looking at VR training tools. Because of what I said about this study by Price Waterhouse, and there are other studies, what a powerful tool this is. When we talk about coaching, this situation of, like, as I said, being face to face, there I see less when it's you and me and we discuss some challenges, then I see less motivation to go into an immersive space. Mm-hmm. So for pure coaching, I see less, even in the future, up to the point where it becomes standard. Just as standard as taking your telephone. You just make click and the other person appears as a hologram, and everybody does that, even if they just order pizza or whatever. So then at that point, of course, you would do it. But I think for a coach, if it's just about coaching, not training, there is less of a motivation to go ahead. Mm-hmm. But if a coach also has certain training programs, there I would recommend a lot looking into it, and everybody who is a trainer, of course. And not just business training, that can also, there is a whole industry of fitness training in VR already. So if somebody is like a fitness trainer, a yoga trainer, and so on, absolutely should look into this.
Yeah, exciting. And I guess once, as you say, because the results you can get are so much higher, the transformation is faster than what's available today, then I can imagine that it could be a huge differentiator for your business if you have these tools.
Absolutely.
To bring this forward. So that would make it quite an interesting proposition to start looking into, to make sure that at the right moment you can take full advantage of this.
Yeah, a differentiator, be ahead of the competition and also not be behind. Yeah.
And how technical would you need to be if you're a corporate trainer, for example, today, or you're someone with a product that you could use virtual reality to demonstrate to people on a bigger scale and more easily? How technical would you need to be to set that up for yourself, or would you need to collaborate with a company or a consultancy to help make that happen?
For the technical part, I wouldn't say that you need any help. It's just as easy as using a laptop, as using a mouse, as using a new headset. Of course, if the product is new, you may have to look, okay, where is the button to switch it on? Yeah, that's things like that, trivial things. Yeah, but it's very user friendly. Technically, it's user friendly in the same way that everything around a PC is user friendly. Certainly, you have to look up some basics, but generally, you don't need a consultant to help you with that.
Okay, that's good to know. And you mentioned about virtual reality. If you wanted to work with people in virtual reality, you would need all that kit. Is that really expensive? It feels like very futuristic and must cost thousands to get you and your clients all set up.
Yeah, a few years ago, certainly it cost thousands, even for very simple headsets. But today's headset, like the Quest 2 that I showed you earlier, that costs about like 350, I would say, Swiss francs, which would be the same in euros, same order of magnitude in US dollars. And the successor model is coming out this fall, which is going to be in the same price range. In the series of the Meta, if we are talking about Meta, which is dominant player in the market, there is also the Meta Pro, which is a bit more than $1,000. But interestingly, already the Quest 3, which is the successor of the Quest 2, it's in the consumer price level, already catching up to the capabilities of the Meta Pro. So if you are a small business and you buy a headset, don't buy a Pro. Yeah, you're perfectly okay with a Quest 2 or wait for a Quest 3 since it's coming out now in this fall.
Yeah.
Or there are a number of other relatively known brands that have a similar range of consumer and more expensive ones. And then there is Apple, of course. The Apple headset at the moment is priced in the high end. It's at 3,500 US dollars. It's a new product that is premium price. If you ask me, like I would expect prices to come down quickly.
Mm. Yeah. Well, that 350 price is a lot less than I was expecting. And if I was to do a training program with, say, 10 clients, would I have to buy headsets for them as well? How would that work?
Yeah, that is a logistic question today, as the headsets are not so common yet. It's changing. But right now, you would probably organize for them to rent if they don't have the headsets, for them to rent. There are companies that rent them.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think that would be, again, if you were to do this virtually and you were to rent them the headsets and have that delivered, I can imagine that's quite exciting as well.
Yeah, it can be, yeah. And the further model also, the disadvantage with the renting is that they will send the headsets to that company, but if they don't have headsets, then they probably also have a number of people who have never worn a headset. And then they might need some time for everybody to figure out how to use it. It's not complicated, but it's the same if you were using a computer mouse for the first time. It's difficult to imagine now as you were all very used to the mouse, but imagine you were seeing that thing for the first time. You would have to figure out what does it do, what is the right button, the left button, and so on. So when the headsets are sent, that's of course convenient. They are on site at their own place and they receive them, or they are maybe also at different locations, maybe also in home offices. Headsets can be sent anywhere, so that's very convenient. But another way to approach it also, we have also an arrangement with educational institution in Zurich for clients who are in Zurich. We have also a space where they can come and where the space has all the infrastructure. So that's also a possibility. That's at an educational institution and there is a trainer there at the physical location who can show people. So this is how you hold the controller, for example. But here, so that's one of the two controllers for the Quest. So when you have never used it, so what direction do I hold it? You have to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone who's listening and not watching the video, it looks a bit like a cup holder in a car or, in the movie theater and you have a little cup holder next to you. So yeah, you're really.
It's true, yeah. That's true. But even that is evolving fast. Even with the Quest 2, which is already starting to be an older model, there are apps where you can put aside the controllers and it will recognize your hands and you can manipulate things with your hands. So that's already developing so fast. So that's already going ahead. And for example, in the Apple Vision Pro, you can manipulate things by your eye movements in addition and by your voice. So there is this idea, which to me is quite plausible, that the interface of keyboard and mouse will in fact disappear in the next 10 years.
It's going to be very interesting to see exactly where things go. So yeah, that's really interesting that there are options and they're not crazy expensive. They are doable for a small business, because when you suggested the topic, I was like, no small business can afford that. And then you challenged me in our conversation. I was like, okay, no, this is interesting. So can you give us a bit of a flavor of some of the ways we will be using virtual reality in the next couple of years? So for a small business, we've looked at training, could be a possibility that if it's one-on-one coaching, it probably doesn't make sense just yet. The Zoom is more than good enough for that.
Yes, yeah.
For that outcome, but training could be a big opportunity. Are there any other ways that we'll be using this?
And another area would be marketing, to have an immersive experience that is accessible through your website and where the person who visits, prospect or potential prospect, could log in and see something, experience something that would be more intense than looking at something on a 2D website. And more intense, you can have a video or you can have a number of videos on your website. And that's, of course, already more engaging content than, let's say, only text, obviously. But if they could go inside an immersive experience, that could be a further step. As an example, marketing in VR is a big thing and big brands are using it a lot already.
Yeah. And you mentioned it's all about communication, connection, collaboration. Will it come into things like networking?
Yes, there are networking events in VR platforms already for a while. For example, in LinkedIn, in a large group that's called the Metaverse Explorers, and they regularly organize networking meetings in various virtual platforms where you can go in, and that's something I didn't mention yet. You can, in most platforms, you can go in either with your headset and then you are fully inside the virtual reality that it's around you. But many platforms also are, if you don't have a headset, allow you to go in through the browser so that you see the virtual environment on your screen, just like in a video game. So it's 3D and your avatar is running around in there and you can control where you're going, but you don't need a headset. So you can go in either way. Like one of the most known platforms is Spatial, where there are many meetings. And where, for example, my company conducts trainings also in Spatial. Yes, so that's certainly a very interesting. I mean, I very much enjoy networking in metaverse platforms because it's boundaryless. I can meet people and I have made good connections to people from anywhere. It doesn't matter. You are there in the virtual space and somebody else might be on the other side of the world.
Yeah. I mean, the world is getting smaller all the time.
Yes.
It sounds like it's about to get really
let me add to that. What is how is it relevant to small businesses? Of course, it opens up a lot of additional networking opportunities since it is no longer limited by your geographic location. That means it also opens up the world for your business much more. Of course, we already work remote a lot. I know there are coaches in your community that work internationally and globally, but it enhances this a lot.
Mm. And again, like we've seen since COVID, everyone's online now. So differentiating yourself, getting your branding, your messaging, your marketing, all of that aspect of your business great is so important now. And it sounds like that level of differentiation is going to be even more important going forward as well. It's just going to become more and more key as this world gets smaller, but also the competition grows because the competition literally can be coming from anywhere. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's the other way. You can go anywhere, but anyone else can also go anywhere. Yeah, that is true.
So are there any downsides that people should be aware of with virtual reality or any limits for the moment that are worth considering?
I wouldn't say that there are downsides to a communication technology as such. It's the same as with the internet. Like we are now in a similar situation like when the internet was starting to take off. A new communication technology is quickly becoming mainstream and allows much more reach for your existing business, allows new business models. Downsides, like, of course, you could say somebody might be addicted to surfing on the internet, but that's not the internet's fault. Yeah, somebody might spend all their day in front of their TV. That's not the fault of television technology. So with everything, it's a question of how to use it in a reasonable, balanced way. There's another thing. Anyone who is connected to the internet, that is everybody, has to make sure that they have IT security in place. And then there are questions of intellectual property, of if you have employees of labor law in different jurisdictions, if you work with dispersed teams. And so these are all questions where you have to make sure that you have the regulatory knowledge or you have somebody who takes care of it for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm adding this for completeness, but they are not really inherent in the technology. Yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned that when you wear these headsets, you can only do so for a limited time because it is a bit disorientating.
Yes, headsets are still kind of early technology. And one issue with the headsets is that some people get seasick in pure virtual reality, not in augmented reality, of course, because in augmented reality, you have the physical world around you as a frame. And that keeps you from getting seasick. But in the pure virtual reality, you may see yourself moving fast forward or turning or whatever, but your body doesn't perceive any acceleration or movement. And that's where the brain gets confused and you get seasick. That's the same as happens at sea.
So
Yeah.
that's a consideration for how you structure a training, for example. You wouldn't want to
Yes.
say it's
That,
going to
yeah.
be 5 hour training, but maybe sort of 30 or 40-minute chunks with breaks in between.
Yeah, there's another reason. These headsets are still quite big and heavy. Yeah. So it's not something that's comfortable to wear like all day. And something I would recommend to everyone who is a trainer to also use a platform where you have the option of having participants join through a browser if necessary, because you never know if there's somebody who reacts sensitively. Most people don't. Most people are okay with the headsets. And if they feel some slight disorientation, it's not a big problem. But there are exceptions of people who react very sensitively. So it's very good to have an alternative.
This has been really fascinating. It's such an interesting discussion. It was something that I didn't really ever think about or know about. So I feel I'm starting to tiptoe into this space and get that understanding. But before we wrap up, is there anything you feel that people should know about the future of communication technologies that perhaps we haven't touched on yet?
Yes, an important point that I would like to emphasize is that we have talked about the technology, important, of course. Without it, we can't talk about all the rest. We have talked about business models, especially for small businesses. That's, of course, central, and I'm very happy to be able to hopefully bring some interesting inputs here for your audience. But we haven't mentioned the behavioral and psychological side. And I think that's also very important. Understanding the technology, understanding potential business models, very important. But in addition, it's also how you perceive it. We touched on it in some of the examples that we talked about, but we didn't talk about it in general. And I think a very central point that I like to emphasize when I talk about it is that all this can succeed. All remote communication, and especially immersive remote communication, needs a mindset where you say co-presence. Being present doesn't mean co-location in the physical sense. You can be present to each other without being physically present. And that's a mindset, that's a choice. Let's look at it the other way. Presence at a physical location doesn't necessarily mean a perceived co-presence. When you think, let's think of an example of people being of an in-group and an individual or a few individuals being out-group for the in-group. They might not be perceived as being present or not being perceived as much present, which of course is not desirable. It's an example of non-inclusive behavior. But that's exactly the things that can be in the head. It's a choice of mindset. Just as you make a choice of mindset to be inclusive, you can make a choice of mindset to see presence as not necessarily the same as physical presence.
Yeah, interesting. Important to consider that aspect as well.
Yes, and I think when you are the coach or trainer, who initiates, then you have to show the leadership of walking the talk and projecting. We meet here, we are together, present, and this is the place.
Yeah, and I guess more good reasons to understand this so that you can set the rules, you can set the lead, if you like, and
yes.
make sure that this technology isn't just a gimmick, but something that's really going to work for everybody, and to have that depth of connection as well.
Yes.
Helena, thank you so much. If anyone
Thank you.
has enjoyed this discussion and wants to know more about your work in this area, where's the best place for them to find you?
So to find me, my website, firstly, my website, so that's Pleinert Partner, Pleinert like my name. Should I spell it?
Yes.
Yes, so it's Pleinert. Pleinert Partner in one word, no dot or nothing in between. So pleinertpartner.com. That's my website, and that's the best way to contact me. Or on LinkedIn, you can find me on LinkedIn. And I have something for your audience here. We have a giveaway that the audience can find at our website, and that's a link that I'm giving only to your audience now. That is pleinertpartner.com/solopreneur metaverse. In one word, solopreneur metaverse.
Great. And that gift, it will help people take that next step to learning what they can do with this and to start immersing themselves in the ideas and prepare for the future. Is that correct?
It will be a small checklist to get started, to give them some ideas.
Brilliant. Helena, thank you so much. That's very generous of you.
You're welcome.
Thank you again. I've really enjoyed this discussion.
Many thanks.